So did you, back when you were young and impressionable, did you ever live in what we in the UK call a squat?
A squat.
Yeah, is that a thing in the States?
Yeah, they talk about squatters.
Right, yeah.
I knew someone who squatted in a loft in Montreal. It was awesome. An incredible space, just this massive space. And he had 7 or 8 different living room setups in there, which was really cool because it was just any furniture he had on the street and he could pack it in. But I felt like they were paying rent. It seemed quasi-legal to me.
So if you don't call it a squat in the States, what do you call it?
Well, we call the people squatters, and we talk about squatters' rights.
We have that, yeah.
Where if there's an unclaimed building and you start habitating in that building, then you have the rights to stay there. So that's a squat is a little different. I think it's more of a bathroom activity.
It's just you go in there to squat.
Yeah.
One of those lavatories where there's no seat. It's just a hole.
I think it's a verb. You can just squat. There's a device called a potty squatty. Or a squatty potty. Anyway, it's little...
Do I want to know what that does? What's that for?
It's just to raise your feet a little bit when you're sitting down. It's... Jeez. What kind of podcast is this?
I think we found our level at last. After 168 episodes, we finally found our level.
Wheelhouse.
Wheelhouse. That sounds like another word for toilet. It does. Hello and welcome to the Two Real Cinema Club. I'm James Rizeka.
And I'm Andres Lorente. Every week on the Two Real Cinema Club, we watch an old film and a new film, and we compare them, or we just compare one apartment to another, or one dog to another, or one donkey to another. And this week we are, in fact, comparing apartments.
We are comparing apartments. This week's movies put me in mind of Land and Freedom. Do you remember watching that? The Ken Loach picture. Yeah. Insofar as like they are, I think, both about I've written my notes here, the attachment that humans form to the places where they live.
Ooh.
So we have watched a new documentary released, kind of currently on tour now, isn't it? Called Secret Mall Apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And we are comparing it to the 1960 Oscar-winning classic, The Apartment, from Billy Wilder. Secret Mall Apartment is touring in the States, isn't it? Didn't you see it? You saw it at your local theatre.
I missed it the first time I could have seen it, which was in this art gallery that does independent films sometimes. And then I've seen it twice now.
Whoa!
It's in my local cinema, and it's been there I saw it April 18th or something like that, and then I just saw it again this weekend, so it's still there 5 weeks later, almost 6 weeks later. So
that's one of the good things about real estate, isn't it? You buy it and it stays where it's put.
Yeah.
So Secret Mall Apartment, so it's directed by Jeremy Workman. So he's a documentary maker. The one thing I know about him is that he is the son of the man who made the 1996 Oscar-winning short film Precious Moments, which I'd never heard of, but you could watch it on YouTube. So Precious Moments, it's like an 11-minute film, which is just a compilation of about half a second of hundreds and hundreds of well-known, well-loved Hollywood movies, which have all just been assembled into a kind of little visual collage of 100 years of cinema.
Oh.
It's the sort of thing which you probably would see on TikTok or YouTube these days, and people have made 1,000 versions of it. But in 1996, it was pretty unique.
Yeah.
And it won the Oscar. This particular documentary, directed by Workman, produced by Workman, but also produced by pod favourite Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah.
Second time he's turned up this year.
I know. It's a good 2025 for him, isn't it?
And I think he's largely instrumental in the film, not only getting made, but also getting distribution and being seen.
For sure. Came at a good time. It's interesting because, of course, his film, the name of which I forget now, did very well. And I think
A Real Pain, I think.
A Real Pain, there you go. Very commensurate with the success of Secret Mall Apartment.
Yeah, I agree. Good year for him. So even though it's a documentary, as we've discussed many times on the podcast, what's the difference between documentary and narrative filmmaking?
Nothing. That's it. Nothing.
Shall I tell you the story? And it is a story.
There you go.
The story
Yeah.
of Secret Mole Apartment.
Yeah, I'm glad you said story or you tell a story, because that's it. They're the same because they both tell stories, not narratives, and narrative films and documentaries both tell story.
There you go. Okay, there we go. So, Secret Mole Apartment is a new documentary about a small collective of Rhode Island artists and friends who discovered in 2003, after developers demolished and destroyed the disused mill buildings where many of them had studios and performance spaces, that there were unused and unknown gaps and spaces in the new, huge Providence Mall. Eventually, after a campaign of urban exploration, they discover a space as big as a small apartment. And so they set about turning it into an actual apartment. They bring in used furniture from the Salvation Army that they have to stealth into the building. They add a portable TV, a PlayStation. And as the project gradually becomes more and more ambitious, they need to build walls, install doors with locks. But how long can they evade mall security? And what will happen when they are found out?
The answer to the first question is 4 years.
Spoilers.
And the second question is, too much happens to them, but at the same time, it's not a whole lot.
I agree. So this film, I've put on the top of my notes. You know what? This film, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think it's pacey. It doesn't hang about. I found it tremendously interesting, even though I was not previously aware of the story. The movie begins with a little TV news bulletin.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing for some people watching this film, they will have watched the coverage of this story when it actually happened, when it emerged in 2007 or 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you were aware of this story before the film being made. I certainly was not.
Not at all. I don't think a lot of people were. Providence it's not a big city, but for New England, it's probably one of the second or third biggest cities in New England. But it's not a big place. It's a tiny state, Rhode Island, and it didn't penetrate our news world up here. So it all happened. I think it happened when I lived in England, actually, because it wasn't 2000. Right. Is it 2004 to 2008 or 2003 to 2007? The story takes
something
place.
Like that, isn't it? Yeah.
So I wasn't living. So maybe I was living. I wasn't living here. So I'm not sure how much it was in the news then, but it's funny because it's almost 20 years after the whole thing was discovered. So it's it's not like an urban myth or urban legend at this point. But as a result, I went into it. I've seen it twice, but the first time I went into it knowing absolutely nothing and thinking, how interesting could this possibly be? And then it turns out to be pretty damn interesting. I mean, I love this film. I cried a couple times. I laughed my head off, and I went back to pay. I paid more money to see it again. So.
Because you certainly paid more money than they paid to live in the apartment in the mall.
That's right.
So I think it's fun. It's pacey. It doesn't waste any time. It uses that kind of Errol Morris style of talking to camera, doesn't it, to tell this interesting story.
Yeah.
But as I think you have kind of hinted at, for all the fun, it does also slightly peter out. And I came away having enjoyed it, but I think it doesn't quite hit those high, hard notes that it sort of promises to at the start. I mean, I wrote in my notes here, this film asks some profound questions. Like, even right from the opening moments of the film, it has this little, 10-second snippet of a news story, and then you get drone footage of Providence and of the mall. And it feels like it's inviting you to think that the film is going to ask, what are cities for? What are living spaces for? And it does ask, what is art for? Mm-hmm. How do we use urban spaces? What do developers owe communities? It asks a lot of really big questions, but it doesn't honestly really get to answer any of them. I think it poses these questions and then slightly peters out and ducks out.
I probably don't feel the same way, because I think this could have been called shopping center efficiency unit, because I think it is really efficient. I think it addresses those and kind of gives you visual answers as well as, the artists talking about it. There's definitely a lot about the development. The fact that this is a monster building, it's a very 90s idea. It's coming a little late. A lot of these malls went into cities, throughout the 80s and 90s, and this sort of came late to the game in Providence. They divert a river in order to build this mall. They pull up train tracks to put this mall in. And Providence is known as especially at that time, a really corrupt city.
Ah.
So you've got a handful of developers making a lot of money, and they've got good friends in the Capitol and in City Hall. And you see scenes like that. There is footage behind all of this. And there's even footage of the developers coming into the neighborhood. I guess it's called, what's it called? Something
Fort Thunder, isn't it?
Fort Thunder's this neighborhood that was...
Mill buildings, which are now kind of disused and have been turned into artist studios.
Beautiful mill buildings that could have been repurposed into townhouses in a really cool neighborhood. And there were people living there, and there were squatters there. We talked a little bit about squatters in the opening. And that all gets wiped out in the name of progress. And they've even, there are these painful views of the State House in Rhode Island that has just been obfuscated by this massive mall that's sitting on top of a highway, basically. So I think it goes into all of that. I think it covers like corruption and development and developers and greed. And then you've got this, I would say, I would have to be bleeped. There's this massive FU to the powers that be that is just carried out by these artists. So I think it's a really complete story, and I think you're right. It doesn't like settle on a lot of themes and go overboard with them. It's more like it's just dropping things in the sort of currency of their lifetime and allowing us to think about it a little bit. I think, it's got its viewpoint. It's got a very clear bias in my mind, but, sort of lets you just come to those realizations without being told so much. So I thought it was great. I thought we should mention that so much of it was filmed on like a handheld picture camera.
Yeah, it's like a Pentax Optio. Little camera that's small enough to fit inside an Altoids can.
Yes.
Which apparently are mints. What are Altoids?
Altoid is a curiously strong mint, I think is how they advertise it. So they're filming so much of it in those years, 2003 to 2007. So there's a lot of it's almost like having a first hand resource, and because they're actually filming things. Like what do they call that? A primary resource, I guess. They're filming things as they're happening in the 2000s, and the stuff they do to that building. The stuff that they get past security is unbelievable. And the fact that they're moving in entire pieces of furniture and building a cement brick wall inside their apartment, inside the mall, is pretty incredible.
I feel like not only do they get it inside the mall, but also to get it into the secret apartment, they have to lift all this furniture up at a vertical ladder. I mean, my heart was in my mouth for every scene where they had like, an enormous sideboard, which probably it probably weighed 50 or 60 kilos, and they're just lifting it up a ladder between two people. I could picture so many scenarios where somebody fell and broke something very
absolutely
important.
It's amazing. So I think that I love this film. I think it's great. Good. I think it's probably an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes at most. So it does move around pretty quickly. It covers a lot of years, and I think it sort of focuses eventually on Michael Townsend, who's sort of this the leader of the gang. He's a little bit older than some of the other artists. This is Providence, Rhode Island, which is home to Rhode Island School of Design, which is called RISD. And that's where the Talking Heads emerged as a rock band in the 70s. So really dynamic art scene, really, really creative people. And these guys are just great, like a great gang. Like Michael's was their instructor for a lot of them in summer school, and even I think it was at RISD. It doesn't make it clear if he was teaching at RISD, but he's sort of the lead artist in all this. And then you get a lot of his backstory, and you see some of his projects. And I was mesmerized by this project called the Tunnel Project, which was in between the train tracks, and I think it looked like a highway. And he's got all these sort of suspended mannequins, and it looks like there are dozens of them. And it was just sort of this free project that it was sort of secret. People would go down into this space and enjoy art right there. And this is one of those things that was probably wiped out in order to put in faceless development, a corporate structure. And so, it really pits, I think, art against capitalism and development in a really, really stark terms, I guess. And I think that's really, really important in the film as well. And I think, there's definitely there's this wonderful turn, though, because, they're originally protesting against the mall. They hate the idea of this, but then they start living in it. And Michael, who, had been studying it and just bemoaning the fact that they were building this in his neighborhood, he ends up really liking the mall. And I think that includes all the stores and conveniences. They're using the bathrooms. They're shopping there all the time. He eventually gets mail delivered to him as an address. They're eating leftover food in the early stages when they're staking it all out. They're eating the leftover food from the food court. He comes to love it, and it really kind of costs him his marriage at one point too. He's more interested in developing that space as an art project than really working on his own home with his wife.
I do certainly envy that there's kind of the idea that they can go and see a movie at the mall, and then just immediately go through a fire exit and up a ladder in their home. Which, I would love to have a place like that. Now you're talking. Yeah.
But then you also get a lot of backstory. He's also an artist who went into children's hospitals into these tape projects where he's creating shapes and images just using little pieces of tape and teaching kids in the hospital to do it, going around to schools around the country. He did a big project, the Hope Project, I think it's called, in New York City, where they taped the outlines of firemen and police officers and people who died in the plane crashes of 9/11. He went to Oklahoma City and did two big projects, one for first responders, which is just this massive mural of tape with angels rising into the sky and people hovering and working on helping people on the ground, and then this big wall project in Oklahoma City as well. So he's got all these other projects. So he's just a very interesting character, and the film eventually sort of settles on him, but it takes a while before it really starts to, decide that he's the protagonist. It's almost like you've got, in this film, you sort of have the problem and the antagonists first, and the protagonists are there, but they sort of start to take more action as the film goes on, and then sort of one person, they really decide to focus on one person before the end of the film.
I think the first artist to speak is actually his ex-wife, isn't it? I think she's the first person who actually appears on screen. So, it does take a while for it to figure out whose story this is. Yeah. I personally think that Michael Townsend's tape art is probably the highlight of the film, actually. I think some of that tape art is just terrific. It's fantastic. I think that art is probably the most moving thing in the film as well. It's beautiful. Probably more beautiful because it's all made in a very temporary way. It's all about impermanence. The tape kind of goes up, and then for the children's hospital projects, it gets peeled down the same day. So he makes these pictures with the children. They go on the walls all over the place, and then they're just removed. And with their 9/11 project, when they're going around New York, people are sometimes peeling away the tape and destroying it as they're putting it up. It's all very, very impermanent. Yes. But, that's kind of the point, I suppose.
It is kind of the point. And think about developers. They're doing a lot of stuff that's very permanent, and it's for very temporary gain. And this is what really, I think, comes out of the film, is that these guys are just looking for a way to make some money in the short term for themselves, maybe their family, maybe their grandchildren, but they're destroying a city in order to do it. They're destroying the culture and the history of a city to do it. So they don't, it's just this, I think it's wonderful, this wonderful contrast of how corporate types think, how developers think, how people in political power think compared to how artists think. And I'm going with the artists all the time. I am team artist. All those other guys are the antagonists. And that's one thing that I really love about this film, is because it definitely makes that, I think that bias is clear, that viewpoint is there, that thesis is there, that if this world were run more by artists, or artists were listened to and respected more, because these guys are poor. Michael Townsend has 41 cents in his bank account at one point, basically. These guys are the ones who really, I think, see greater visions, more human visions of the world than the developer type. So I think it's perfect, because there is this whole permanence, impermanence theme in the film as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
But I think that kind of hones in on the one thing I think is missing from the film. This is why I feel it asks questions and doesn't quite answer them, because I feel like if you're going to make a big, legitimate, proper documentary about this kind of urban exploration adventure that these guys did, and the way that they were anti-capitalists reclaiming this mall space, now is your ideal opportunity to try and interview some of the developers. So I was kind of surprised and disappointed that we didn't then get, a contrarian view, because I'm guessing, an interview with the developers would only have left you exiting the cinema with even less respect for developers and even more fury at urban development. But I felt like it was a shame not to see that other side of the coin.
Yeah, good point.
This seems like the ideal opportunity. Let those guys condemn themselves. You can give them just enough rope to hang themselves with.
Yeah.
And that felt like a missed opportunity to me.
Yeah. Oh, great point. I think you're right. There are a couple things. They talked to one of the city planners or someone in city government at the time. There's the woman who works in an office somewhere, but there's very little from
that's true.
Point of view. Yeah, you're right. I think that would be interesting because it appears they don't make much. They really focus on the Providence Mall, but it looked like there was, Providence Marketplace or something like that, which went up in their Fort Thunder area. And I think you see it in the shadow at one point, but that thing in particular seems like it just that's when they had to leave that neighborhood. And I think there was some undercover camera footage of one of the developers telling them to clean up and be out by Friday or something like that. And they've got this basically a museum that they're supposed to move, and the building was probably just raised anyway. So you get a couple glimpses at the developers and how. And I think there's some sort of almost like cameo footage of them parking their cars and talking about what they're going to wipe out at one point. But I think you're right. I think that would have been a great touch just to see what their vision is, but. For me, it's just, I think it's just soulless the way they'll go into a neighborhood that's old and a little bit run down, and probably that's where the poor people live. That's where the artists are going to live, and they don't have any say. You just buy up the property, you wipe it out, and put up another mall. Now, the great thing is, by the end of the film, we learn that Providence Mall is basically failing, and that they're actually, the great irony, they're actually thinking about turning some of those spaces into apartments, and it's just... It's perfect. It's
like everything comes full circle. It's beautiful. There's lots of little satirical touches in this film, some of which are just made by observation. Like the tape art that Michael does. He does it in the children's hospital, but the hospital is called, now have I got this right? It's called the Hasbro Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Is that a real thing? Is that that's like that's like having the Kentucky Fried Chicken obesity unit or something like that. That seems amazing to me.
Well,
welcome to the McDonald's Cardiac Center. Yeah. It really, I don't know, have you seen Zoolander?
A long time ago,
the Ben Stiller comedy where he kind of, he says, the Derek Lou Zoolander School for Kids Who Want to Read Good. I mean, it feels like that, but in real life. Is that a real thing?
It probably is. I mean, I forget. It has something brothers. The brothers are named they have a Haslett, or I don't know what their name is, but it's the brothers, or is Hasbro a family name, and they make the...
They're the people currently turning Barbie into more than $1 billion. Yep.
Yep. But again, that's great, because that is... That's corporate whitewashing, isn't it? Like, your company probably does not do that much good for the world, and yet if you can buy a hospital wing or put your name on a stadium or something like that, it just makes you look a lot better. So that's in there too. It's very subtle.
Let's talk about the ending of the film. Should we ring the spoiler bell?
Yeah.
We'll ring the spoiler bell and then talk about like the last 20, 25 minutes or so. I'll ring it here. There we go, echoing down the corridors of the otherwise deserted and now ruined Providence Mall.
The mall is closing.
So I wrote my notes here. I was so proud of this. I must have been very late at night. I wrote, this film is a synecdoche, if I pronounce that right.
Yes.
As far as it kind of contains itself, like in many ways. Not only, it literally contains itself insofar as there's this beautiful, very enjoyable scene where one of the artists has made a model of the mall, which he can then disassemble. And inside there is a perfect little model of the hidden secret apartment inside the model of the mall, inside the movie about the mall.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I started making a list because this film is like the secret apartment. It's kind of handmade. Mm-hmm. It's been assembled piece by piece over many years. It's low budget. And also, I think the film, a little bit like the apartment itself, kind of seems to come to a close kind of quite quickly without proper conclusions. Yeah. It's like, I wrote down here, before it's had a chance to put in the wood flooring, build a bathroom, and add a second bedroom. Yeah. It's like, I felt like the movie kind of chugged on to its conclusion, fairly abruptly in those last sort of 15, 20 minutes. But it does this other kind of very, very clever synecdoche type of thing, where in the movie about some people building a makeshift apartment in a mall, they go to a studio and they build a makeshift replica of the makeshift apartment. And so like they build a replica of the apartment, and then they act out some of the last scenes
that's great.
for what really happened in the actual apartment, and then in the movie, or in real life, the authorities dismantle the apartment, and in the movie, the filmmakers dismantle the pretend apartment, which is an exact 1-to-1 scale model of the apartment that was made. Yeah. It's like so many layers and so many mirrors balanced against each other. It feels like genius. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So they reenact with the actual Michael Townsend. That's it. Like the final moments of the apartment. He has brought a new woman that he is presumably hoping to impress to their mall apartment. And I think there had already been a break-in, and they were already aware that security knew they had built this apartment. And apparently the security officers had probably been using the apartment to crash and play PlayStation. But, he's there trying to impress this woman when the door opens, and it's, a cute kind of acting out of that moment that probably we've all experienced, where something's happening, and in your mind you play through all the possible scenarios that might be about to unfold in a moment, and so they act out all these kind of scenarios. Maybe it's security, maybe it's a friend, maybe he's going to come and welcome the mall owners and feed them dinner and make buddies of them, or maybe he's going to go on the run. It's all these different possible scenarios get played out in front of us. Yeah. But what really happens is that the people who own the mall come in, and he's arrested. I think he spends one night in prison, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they do this other kind of self-reflexive thing where they sort of demolish the apartment, but they don't really. What they do is they take down this cinder block wall, which the artists have built, and they use those cinder blocks to build a different wall in a different part of the apartment to seal it off. So it's like the secret apartment sort of eats itself towards the end of the movie.
Yeah, I love the fact that they rebuilt the apartment and used it, sort of visited one more time. But he does go back at the very end. He does open a door to get in there, so it's not clear if they probably just staged that somehow. But he'd been prohibited from entering the mall because of his long-term trespassing, I guess. So he does go back with a key, opens the door, and goes in, and it's largely the way it was when they found it.
yes, largely unchanged.
It's like another home of his being destroyed and razed for nothing. I love it. I think there's a lot of life as art and art as life. That's a major theme throughout. And I think one of my favorite parts is the fact that they'd been filming this faithfully for 4 years, and then all of a sudden he said they stopped filming because it felt like they were on a sitcom. It's like their art project had become a different kind of art that they did not want to play a part in anymore. So as much as it's sad to see the apartment go, it seemed like at that point, even though he wanted to put in flooring and all that, it had run its course. It had taken into a different art form that they weren't willing to explore. And I love that. But I think there's just a big criticism of development in this country, and development is kind of an oxymoron because it's the way America lives and consumes, and it's not very healthy, and it's not getting people housed or served any better than we were before mall culture. So, and I think malls are just affronts to artists who believe life in the world and cities can be artful and beautiful. They don't have to be these big block constructions that are just, corporations and shopping experiences. So that's all in there. And I think they explored that. And it's funny because he has this new girlfriend by the end of the documentary, and she doesn't really seem to understand why he thought of it as an art project. And for me, I get it really, really obviously. For me, it's very much an art project. But I can understand that someone wouldn't get it. But I think the documentary proves that it was a successful art project. Very few people saw it, but thanks to the film, people get a glimpse into it and what it was all about. And I think that's the important thing here.
It's a film that's kind of about. It kind of reminded me of a few other things. I don't know if you've read The Rorschach Texts, which was a novel which was kind of a bit trendy in this country, maybe sort of 20 years ago or something like that. But a lot of that story happens in what the author calls unspace. These kind of like, these spaces, in between, like around like the back of the shelves in the library, in the kind of the storage space around the back of the building, or the place where people keep their bins. It's not the real living space where anything happens. And there feels like there's a universe of unclaimed unspace.
Yeah.
Where an alternative kind of life can exist.
Yeah.
This is like a film about turning unspace into space.
Yeah.
In the same way that it's asking, what is art? What is it for? It's kind of asking, what are public buildings? What are public spaces?
Yeah.
When you produce public buildings, there are literally spaces, gaps, holes, which could then become, have another life. Yep. It's a very interesting idea. Yeah. It's an aspect of urban life which is underexplored, I think, this notion of kind of unspace.
Yeah.
And it's great to see it appear here on screen as the main character.
Yeah, I agree entirely. That's another great point from you. Boy, you're hot today. Because I don't know if you have the same problem right now with housing in the UK that we have over here. But, obviously there's so much space that could be envisioned differently so that it could be living space. And for me, there's just a lot of wasted space. And, developers are not the answer because they're generally, again, short term. They want to make some money fast. They want to sell things at a high price, which means everything that's built here now seems to be for uber wealthy people. So we're just this subservient class doing everything for the comfort of the wealthy. So I think that's in there. And there are very few wealthy artists. I mean, some make handsome livings, I suppose, but that's a pretty small percentage.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, it's a very tall, pointy pyramid, isn't it? The economic world of art.
He has a beautiful metaphor, though, in there, too, about the barnacle and the whale. Like, the barnacle attaches itself to the whale, and the whale doesn't really notice. The whale really shouldn't care. It's just going to go along for the ride. And he's, there's definitely little guy. There's some little guy syndrome here, like a David and Goliath scenario here, which I think we'll see in the other film as well. But I think that's pretty clear, too.
Yes. Well,
are you calling? Are you calling them or not?
Well, I am going to call only because we have seen mole security in this film, and it did remind me of our favourite law enforcement unit. So I'm going to call them, but mostly because I like playing the music rather than because I have anything to report.
Oh, I'd like to talk about the mole security a little bit anyway. So that's good. That's good.
Okay. I'll put in the call. I'll drop the dime. Here we go.
I think they'll like this one.
Cliché Squad.
So, okay, the Cliché Squad have rolled up. What have you got to show them?
I just love first of all, Cliché Squad, we love you. You're nice guys. The small security here, they're portrayed, we don't know what they were really like. So I love the fact that it's dramatized and these guys are just, the new guys, because the previous small security in this facility was terrible. I mean, there's a lot of gaping holes in this, and that's why they can build the secret apartment. The new guys come along, and they've got all these keys, and they're testing them. They find the key to the door that the artists have built, and it doesn't, they don't have that key. They eventually break in, and I just love the scene where they're playing, they're on PlayStation, they're eating takeout food in there, they're smoking some joints, and playing. It's hilarious. So those are my kind of mall security guards, but they do turn them in at some point. They must rat on them, which is kind of uncool. So mixed feelings.
Towards the end of the movie, Michael is kind of very charitable to mall security, I think. And A, he kind of says, well, they're just guys doing their job.
Yeah.
But B, he kind of points out, they stole like a bunch of things from the secret apartment. The thing they stole was the PlayStation.
Yeah.
And he was saying, the reason they must have stolen that was because on the memory card, there would be dates to prove what days we were in the in the apartment. And I love that he's being so charitable there. What he means is they stole the PlayStation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the dates that they were playing on the machine are there too, presumably.
Yes, exactly. It's just, these guys just stole our PlayStation.
And photographs. That's the other thing, as evidence.
Yeah. So, the most personal stuff.
So, not so cool. Our guys, the Cliché Squad guys, they're not like that. They're nice dudes.
Okay, so I think a lot to enjoy here.
Yeah.
Admirably brief. Many mirrors within mirrors in this film. It's a artfully well-made, fascinating documentary. Ultimately, it's about something which is asking big questions but making small actions, I think. It's some people who moved some furniture into a little gap in a mall. I mean, it's not earth-shattering and it's not really life-changing. And it offers a route into some interesting questions, but I still think they don't quite answer the questions they could. But you know what? It's very entertaining.
Absolutely.
You could do a lot worse. 90 minutes of interesting material.
Yeah.
And it's kind of captured a very specific moment in time as well, because if the same thing happened today, then there will be thousands of hours of people live streaming their time in the secret mall apartment, wouldn't there? Everybody would have their own iPhone and they'd be taking video. You'd have to wade through hundreds of hours of footage of building the apartment. Whereas, this all happened after it was possible to fit a little camera inside a mint tin, but before the ubiquity of smartphone cameras. So it captures a very specific moment. And that kind of grainy footage that they use to show, to tell the story, is very evocative of exactly that early 2000s era. So it's a record of a moment in time.
Yes. We're going to be nostalgic for grainy footage.
Yeah.
Everything's going to look too good here soon. So be careful.
Everything will be in 4K from now on. Record your crimes in 3D. Yes. Well, let's have a break. We'll make our way down to the mall washrooms.
Yes.
Pick up some popcorn, and then climb back up a rickety ladder, and we'll come back and we'll talk about The Apartment.
And we are back. James, I noticed you came from the regular bathroom, but I have a key to the executive bathroom.
You're always pulling rank on me.
Wow, was that a nice experience. I wasn't expecting the facial rub. Awesome.
I'm not sure I fancy the idea of the facial rub, actually. Frankly, you can keep it.
It was
I want to keep my face to myself when I go to the bathroom. Thank you very much. So to compare with Secret Mall Apartment, so we scouted around for something which would go hand in hand with this film, and you are the one who suggested Billy Wilder's 1960 classic, winner of 5 Oscars, in fact, in 1961. So The Apartment won Best Picture, Best Director, Screenplay, Art Direction, and Editing.
Boy.
Although interesting, these were the last Oscars that Billy Wilder ever won as well.
Oh, really?
For The Apartment. Yeah, interestingly.
Wow.
So we have watched The Apartment, Jack Lemmon, Shirley MacLaine. You chose this one.
Yeah.
How come?
Do you have any other questions for me, Counsel?
Because they both have the word apartment in the title.
Genius.
Yes. Now, also, I had this idea of like this illicit use of space. That was the other thing that
very good.
came to mind. So those are basically the only ideas. Also, I don't think we've done a Billy Wilder film, and this is a great one to do. And there's some particular tricks that he was excellent at that are definitely in this film. So I felt like, it's time to do some Billy Wilder reverence here on the pod. So
I mean, this is the film he made immediately after Some Like It Hot. Am I right?
Yes, and it sounds like they wanted another hit. They just worked with Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis, of course. I.A.L. Diamond is the co-writer with Billy Wilder, so they just kind of went with Jack Lemmon and figured we can get another hit out, and they sure did. So these two films are, I think, 2 years apart, something like that.
Yeah, I think it may even be 1 year. I think Some Like It Hot was 59, and The Apartment is 1960.
So there. Based loosely, I believe, on Brief Encounter.
yes, weirdly, I read the same thing. Yes.
And then also some life experience of, I guess, I.A.L. Diamond and some of his friends who knew that others were using their apartment for encounters, and that one, I think, combined with this idea that one mate of his had a girlfriend who died by suicide not in Niall Diamond's bed, but I think in the friend's bed after he'd broken up with her. So there's some things in there that were true to life. And what is it? Something about tragedy and comedy, or only separated by time, or something like that. There's an expression, right?
Yes. That's a Woody Allen gag, isn't it?
Yes, I feel like that.
Comedy's just tragedy plus time. But I never really agreed with that.
No, but hey, it works on the podcast. Makes you sound
smart,
interesting, or something, or deep. I don't know what the heck it is.
Well, do you want to tell us the story for those who have not seen it? And I had seen this once before tonight. Yeah, no, I had seen it once before.
Okay.
But anyway, please tell us the story of The Apartment.
I will. Screenplays by Billy Wilder and I.L. Diamond. Cast is Jack Lemmon plays C.C. Baxter. Shirley MacLaine plays Fran Kubelik. And Fred McMurray plays Jeff Sheldrake. The Jack Lemmon character, C.C. Baxter, is a sort of by-the-numbers insurance agent who is a mere one of countless workers on an office floor of countless desks where he lives a very regimented life, work life anyway. As a lower-level office worker, Baxter gains leverage and promotions by letting his apartment to the executives in the company as a place to take their mistresses. So he often has to get out of his apartment so that they can get it on and get into the apartment, or maybe get into the apartment and get it on. I got to get the order right there. So he often is not there, but others are there, giving him a reputation with his neighbors as a true ladies' man. The Dreyfuses who live next door can hear everything. After sleeping on a park bench one night so that Mr. Dobish, one of his sort of higher executives, can entertain a Marilyn Monroe lookout that he's just met in a pub, Baxter gets sick. He's already tired of not living his best life in this sycophantic service in hopes of a promotion. He starts ranting and raving about corporate life and goes to the big boss, Jeff Sheldrake, played by Fred McMurray. He's on the 20, I think, what is it? Jack Lemmon's on the 16th
27th floor or something like that.
And then he's on the 29th floor or something like that.
Something like that.
He goes up there to demand a better job. Sheldrake starts admonishing him for not letting him use the apartment. So Sheldrake secures use of the apartment for use with the alluring waif elevator operator, Miss Fran Kubelik, played by Shirley MacLaine. All of the executives seem to pine for Miss Kubelik, but she has the most in common with C.C. Baxter, chemistry-wise. I just used a little trick from the film. Yes, chemistry-wise. Eventually, Kubelik will break Baxter's heart, but Sheldrake will in turn break her heart, prompting her to rashly decide to gobble up all of Baxter's sleeping pills in the apartment. It will be Baxter who comes to her rescue and nurses her back to physical and emotional well-being. But will she end up with Sheldrake, Baxter, some other executive, or the now age-appropriate Billy Crystal? Who exactly will she run to in a dramatic New Year's Eve rush date with destiny? And will the promotion for which Baxter toiled so long and hard be worth it? And exactly how much nicer and cleaner is the executive bathroom that comes with that promotion?
Yeah, pointedly, we never see that executive bathroom for all the talk about it. You're right.
Know. I wish we had. That's another thing. So if we wanted to see the developers in the first film, we want to see that executive bathroom in the second film.
So this movie is kind of, it's marketed as being, a riotous comedy. The poster makes it look like a comedy. It's all about, there's never been a film like this, romance-wise or laugh-wise, something like that. It says, or otherwise wise. That's what it says on the poster.
Otherwise wise. Yeah, exactly.
But it's partly comical, but it's kind of a comedy drama, isn't it? And there's actually a lot of serious tragedy in this film. Yeah, and it's a pretty cynical, dour, sad film with a kind of, a broken heart at its core, isn't it, in this film? Yeah. So, it's not just a straight up comedy by far. One thing which I kind of forgotten about, but which is, absolutely clear, second time watching this film, is this is Shirley MacLaine's film.
Yeah.
I think. I think Jack Lemmon is great, but I feel like I'm enjoying watching Jack Lemmon perform during this film. But for a good 50% of the time that she's on screen, Shirley MacLaine does not appear to be acting at all. Yeah. She just seems to be just being. I think she's absolutely spellbinding. She is dynamite in this film. She is just fantastic. Yeah. But she is, a little bit like Brando in sort of Streetcar Named Desire or something like that. Yep. Almost like she's stepped out of another film. She looks like she belongs in a different movie because she is so sort of effortless and charming and looks like she's just being herself. Yeah. And it's herself that we love watching.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. And I think, you have to look at Jack Lemmon as being the connective tissue between the executives and the corporate world and then the apartment. He's excellent. He's strong connective tissue, but that's really kind of his role. And he's definitely billed as the lead or the co-lead. But I think you're right. She sort of takes this film over once we see her. And there's actually a scene, there's this great piece of direction I'll talk about later where we kind of see that happen very clearly. And Fred MacMurray was replacing another actor, I think. He was not originally, or he may have been considered for a different role in the film. But so he stepped up as Jeff Sheldrake, and he does a perfectly serviceable job. But again, he's not warm and fuzzy. He's not the person we're attracted to in this film. It's definitely Shirley MacLaine.
I think Fred MacMurray until now had always played, good guys, hadn't he?
Yeah, Double Jeopardy, he's a really conflicted character, which I think precedes this film.
Yeah.
So he could do both, but it's hard to take him seriously as a really evil guy, because I grew up with him on a program called My Three Sons. I don't know if that ever played in the UK.
Never heard of it.
Okay, he played a single dad. I think he was a widower, and he had 3 sons and a live-in butler of sorts. He was like the houseman. So he was Mr. Good Guy, just a clean living dad and nicest guy possible. But that's then I think the next thing I saw him in was Double Jeopardy. He said, "That's not Mr. Dwyer from My Three Sons."
I suppose this film has quite a lot to say about the world of 1960, doesn't it? The Second World War was only 15 years before. Yeah. And I think it was pretty outrageous, the notion that these executives would be having affairs and taking women to an apartment. And I think it's a sort of a post-Hays Code, controversial, shocking film.
Yeah.
It's, flirting with some pretty edgy material.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And there's a lot of great writing in this film. So I think when you mentioned the awards that it won, they're all deserved. It's like they're just masterful direction and masterful screenwriting. It's very well edited. It's just and it looks great. I love the apartments. It captures that 60s feel.
It does look great.
Beautiful black and white, just beautifully shot. But there's this one scene where, I love it, because Kubelik is a mistress to Sheldrake, and he hasn't bought her a meaningful Christmas gift, and he gives her $100 bill. And, we've seen all these executives take their temporary mistresses, and we find out that Sheldrake's had a lot of mistresses over the years, and he's pretending to really be in love with Kubelik. And it's wonderful. How he's, it's this admission that he's sort of pimping her, and then she returns the $100 bill by way of a card and a suicide attempt. Did we talk about that? No, not really. Well, she did. Yeah, I mentioned in the opening that she swallows his sleeping pills. So I will agree with you that, there's this big moment after the suicide attempt where it sort of becomes this chamber piece for, 20 minutes, where it's just kind of like the doctor and Baxter, Jack Lemmon's character, and Shirley MacLaine in the apartment. Some slow moments. It's not terribly comic. I mean, you get Jack Lemmon trying to make light of things a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's comic. It's more like he's trying to heal her with comedy and levity, I guess. But it turns into something very stagey and theatrical for a good, 15 or 20 minutes before.
Yeah, I do feel like that, that scene of trying to revive Fran is uncomfortable, difficult to watch these days.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it was intentionally difficult to watch in 1960 as well.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they were trying to explore this notion that, suicide or attempted suicide is not neat and it's not clean.
Yeah.
And that, if you succeed, then there's a whole big mess for other people to clear up.
Yeah.
If you fail, it's a whole big, long, messy process. And it's not something that you can snap back out of.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can get a single injection for and let's forget it ever happened. So I'm sure that is deliberate, but it's uncomfortable to watch. I think we talked about this earlier before we were recording about how Shirley MacLaine just kind of gets slapped about the face brutally so many times. It just makes my toes curl. It's really uncomfortable to watch. And then she gets, a quart of coffee poured down her throat and presumably directly into her lungs. And the whole thing is, it does feel like a kind of 1960s attitude to mental health as well. It does feel like the way that we would treat this topic these days would be very different.
Yeah. So that's, the Dr. Dreyfus, who happens to live next door and is friendly with Baxter. He comes to the rescue in the middle of the night to just walk. They march her back and forth in that living room a bunch too, to try and torture her back into consciousness. It's it's not the best of bedside manner, I guess.
It's not that guy is way too moralising to be a proper doctor. You can't get away with wagging your finger at your patients these days for their behaviour. It's simply not appropriate. But there is a lot of kind of great, you were talking about how much you like the script. There's that great, very quotable, very memorable line where Fran and Sheldrake have an argument and she throws her compact at him. And so as a result, the mirror is broken. Yeah. And she says, I like the mirror like that. It makes me look the way I feel.
Yes.
It's a lovely bit of writing. Yeah. And I think, there is a strong subtext about class, isn't there, in this film, about how the executives and the wealthy are using and taking advantage of the people who are under them, or the people who are less advantaged, the people with less money and less privilege.
And I love I would just go back to the callbacks a little bit, because this film is full of them. Just what I also call setups and payoffs. Some people just call them a callback, but it's kind of the same idea. The way that Cece Baxter realizes that it's Kubelik who is Sheldrake's mistress is that he finds that mirror, doesn't he? It's broken.
Yeah.
And he realizes, that's hers. So it's just you introduce a prop, or in this film there's also a dialogue callback, which I really liked. And then it has some meaning once you show it on screen, and then it comes back with more meaning later on. It's similar with the sleeping pills. Like at one point, Baxter doesn't want to leave his apartment in the middle of the night, and he mentions that he has just taken a sleeping pill, and that tells us that when Kubelik goes looking around in the medicine cabinet after McMurray, or Sheldrake's character, Sheldrake has abandoned her in the apartment, she sees the sleeping pill. So they've just been set up so we know what to expect. It's not just random little moments. But the dialogue callbacks are great too, when it's sort of like she starts talking. She realizes she's sort of in love with Baxter when she realizes that she's in love with his language, and that's why we use the chemistry-wise question there. Like he says, that's the way it crumbles, cookie-wise. So she starts using his language, and then she remembers some of her language too. Like, I'd spell it out for you, but I can't spell. So these dialogue callbacks come back as well, and it just, it sort of proves that their lives are interacting, but they're really meant to be together ultimately as well. And that's like classic Wilder. He's just very good at making sure those are embedded in the story, and then also taking them all through, the direction stage as well, getting them on screen so that they're effective. And I think those are just little touches of really masterful filmmaking.
I did read in an interview with Shirley MacLaine that she says that the script for the movie was largely a shell when they started filming.
Wow.
So Billy Wilder encouraged her and Jack Lemmon to improvise a lot, to try and flesh out their scenes. Yeah. And the chemistry between them is, chemistry-wise, it's pretty great, actually. I think they bounce off each other very well. Yeah. I think especially like in, not so much when they're in the apartment, but when they're in the elevator, when they're at work. I think they it's really sparkle, those scenes. Yeah. It's not kind of smouldering chemistry. It's like a bit of like genuine. It feels like sort of light, frothy affection. It's very sweet.
Yeah, it's very nice. They get each other, and I think
that's it. They get each other.
The reason I mentioned Billy Crystal was because isn't there a scene at the end of When Harry Met Sally that he's running back on New Year's Eve to go dancing with her and proclaim his love for her? And it just as soon as I saw her doing that, I thought, oh. This is so it's like another film calling back on on The Apartment. And then the fruitcakes too. Like someone sends Baxter fruitcakes.
Oh yes,
every year for Christmas. We should mention that the time frame is sort of Christmas to New Year's, a little bit before probably. And she says, "Oh, I'll just send Sheldrake a fruitcake every year." So the callbacks are all over the place. At some point, you're kind of showing off with how good your storytelling is, or how well you've thought a few things out. But it's good. It's a good film. But I agree with you. It's not fully a comedy by any means. It's not even that. There aren't that many laugh out loud moments. I think it's witty, right? I think there's a real critique. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a very real critique of corporate America, executives having power over their own underlings, but also over women at that time, over women to this day as well. But there's a very strong critique there. So it has a message, I think. That's what makes it great. It is kind of it's an easy watch. I think it's about 2 hours long, but has this nice jazz orchestration to the soundtrack. It just looks and feels like New York City at that time. So it captures an era. It moves pretty quickly for 2 hours, for sure.
Talking about attitudes to women, I mean, it is very much a film of its time. I mean, arguably, although it is talking about the power that the male characters have over the women, it's not tremendously interested in the women as characters, is it? I think most of the women characters are kind of a bit cliches.
Very much,
At least they are kind of less sophisticated characters than the men.
Yeah.
Fran, is the most sophisticated character, and it's her movie. But of the other women, so like Dobish's Monroe lookalike that he meets in the bar. Or the other executives, secretaries and girlfriends are kind of cliches, aren't they? They're not particularly sophisticated characters. And worse than that, this film rather shortchanges people of colour. There is one man of colour in the film, and he appears as a shoeshine guy. Fred McMurray, kind of doesn't even really particularly talk to him or won't touch him. He just flicks like a quarter at him for shining his shoes. I watched that and I felt embarrassed for the character and the actor. But this is Hollywood of 1960, I suppose. This is a little window into the era.
I don't even remember that moment. I mean, I saw it maybe a week ago, so it's not that fresh in memory. But I don't even remember it. That's how little it was. On screen. But what else is barely on screen but wisely disappears is there's a voiceover at the very beginning, but it doesn't last very long. I think it just gets the story started, introduces us to New York City and his life there, but then it's abandoned after the first maybe 10 minutes or something like that. So it's probably a pretty good use of a voiceover. It just gets the story started.
Yeah.
Some quick
I wonder whether it would be possible to trim it completely. It probably would, but it probably saves you a bit of time and energy, doesn't it? Because I think it's, you get that kind of, it's like that classic structure of like the first 10 or 15 minutes are the ordinary world, aren't they?
Yeah. Yep.
You get like this little 10-minute picture which tells you everything about the status quo up until today.
Yeah.
And in fact, it even probably takes place over a single day, that sort of opening 10 or 15 minutes of status quo.
Yep.
So it explains you exactly how Baxter's life works, what he's got to put up with.
Yeah.
And then once you've explained that, then you can kind of, begin your kind of first act turning point, or the thing that flicks you into the second act by things changing now. And, you see how it's going to differ from the norm.
Yes. Oh, beautiful. Different from the norm, because it seems like every day is like that. And then all of a sudden this one moment starts to happen. And also different from the norm is you've got all the very weak kind of very broadly brushed female characters. And then you've got the one standout female character.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Like the normal has its place in order to let other things stand out, I guess. The one thing I just mentioned it a little bit in passing, but there's this great transition shot early on, because for the first, 20, 25, 30 minutes of the film, it's really Jack Lemmon's on screen all the time. It's really his film. But he and Shirley MacLaine are on the street talking one time, and then all of a sudden the camera just goes and follows Shirley MacLaine, and it's just like this moment where, okay, yep, she's the star of the film. We're going somewhere from here. We've had everything set up perfectly. They're on the street together. He walks his way, she walks hers, and you'd think, oh, we're going to go with Jack Lemmon somewhere, but no way. It starts following Shirley MacLaine. It's just this wonderful transition. It's seamless.
I mean, that's having not seen it for a long time, so I'd forgotten the twists. That moment when she crosses the road and goes down into the Chinese restaurant. That was the moment when I twigged, I bet she's going to meet Sheldrick.
Yes.
It's very skillful little bit of storytelling. They've given you just enough clues for you to be able to guess it, but not enough that they've kind of made it barn door obvious.
Yeah.
So it's just like, that's one of those great tricks where you give the audience just enough to guess what the twist is, and then when it happens, they pat themselves on the back for being so clever.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways that you grab the audience, I think.
Yeah. I loved this one moment. This is a very minor detail, but I loved it when there's this Christmas office party that's going on, and that's where Fran sort of learns that Sheldrake has had other secretaries and as mistresses and other mistresses, and she's not the only one. But there's just the scene sort of oozes with this kind of very funny sexuality, because it seems like everyone has had a few drinks and they're all making out with co-workers in the office. I love it. It sort of it tells you that there is romance in the air somewhere. Is it going to be Sheldrake and Kubelik? Is it going to be Baxter and Kubelik or what? But it made me laugh because I've never been to that office party. I guess I'm envious, but.
But I presume you have the stationery cupboard, didn't you, at school? Isn't that's where these things happen?
There are cupboards, yes. Big cupboards.
I did read that initial shot that sets up the office, where you have desks that appear to disappear all the way off to the horizon, is a clever trick shot, not done with mirrors, but done with smaller and smaller desks.
Yeah. Apparently
the desks very far off towards the back of the office are very small desks with children working at them.
Children?
Yeah, it's clever. There's one other little bit of trivia, which this was news to me, but I'm sure it won't be news to anybody else. Not one single other person listening to the podcast. I will be the only person listening to this and not knowing this. But I did not know that Shirley MacLaine, born Shirley MacLaine Beatty, older sister of
Warren Beatty.
Yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's one of those facts where, having learned that, suddenly everything else drops into place. Now I understand. She's still alive, isn't she, Shirley MacLaine? I think 90-something now.
I think they both are, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're good genes in the family anyway, yeah.
Good genes.
Survivors.
Right. Well, it's classic for a reason. Often put up those lists of, top 100, top 20, top 50 films ever made. Wonderful to see The Apartment once again.
Yeah.
Lots of parallels with Secret Mole Apartment, more than just the name.
Yes.
But before we talk about those parallels and draw them together, I'm going to force you, with the threat of taking away your key to the executive washroom, I'm going to force you to play Who Am I? Who am I?
No, I'm going to ask you. You go first because I haven't given this enough thought. There are very few choices for me.
Okay, yeah.
I know that you're Dreyfus, and I want to hear why you're Dreyfus because the doctor there.
Oh, of course, it's a film with a doctor in it, right? And I am regularly punching my patients to bring them around from their anesthetic. I would love to imagine. I would love to think there was a world where I would fit in with the tremendously creative art collective in Secret Mole Apartment. Because I honestly, without gilding the lily at all, I think you would fit in with those guys absolutely fine. I really admire their commitments to these kind of big, unfunded projects, public art, art that means something. I think those guys are just great, and I'm full of admiration. But I don't think I could hold a candle to them. So I would just be inflating my ego. I'm not clever or creative or selfless enough. So instead, I reckon if I'm like anybody on tonight's films, I'm like the guy who sits next to Jack Lemmon at the insurance company, watching Jack Lemmon get promoted over him and indignantly saying, but I've been here longer than you. Why are you getting a promotion? Yeah, that's me. There we go. I am that guy.
Oh, that's good.
Just trudging on through my life while other people continue to race ahead over the horizon. How about yourself then? Did you see yourself tonight?
That guy has a full-size desk, so don't knock him too much. He's got a good living, probably. Obviously there aren't many men other than either a somewhat evil-hearted doctor or those evil-hearted executives in the apartment. So, but I don't feel like I'm quite Jack Lemmon. So.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah. So this is more like a "Who Am I Not" episode, I think, because I want to be in that art group, but I can't be Michael Townsend. So he's just too strong an artist and too cool for me. So I'm probably one of the guys who doesn't mind carrying a cinder block up a vertical staircase and likes going to the Goodwill to pick up furniture. So I'm probably a satellite artist in the collective there. I don't know who exactly, but. I'm not Michael, but I'm one of the artists in
Good for
Secret
you.
Mole Apartment.
Good.
Yeah.
That's where I will put you as well.
Good.
Either that or I tell you what, in the footage of Fort Thunder, in the Secret Mole Apartment, there was like a hardcore band.
Yes.
With some people, bobbing their heads pretty emphatically while the guy smashed the hell out of some drums.
Yes.
You could do that. You could definitely do that.
I have to look this up. I might do this while we're talking, but I think that band or one of those bands is coming to the gallery where Secret Mole Apartment recently played. So I don't like that kind of music, but I love that aesthetic. I would love the idea of playing in warehouses, and I guess you got to play punk if you're in a warehouse. But yes, that was the other person who did come to mind. You're good.
See, I know you.
I'm glad one of us is having a good episode, because it's great if at least one of us is standing out. Makes for good listening.
Right, it's that time. See whether we can draw these two apartment-based movies together.
The synthesis.
So I'd looked up some statistics before we started recording. So last year, 2024, in the UK, the statistics think there were 354,000 homeless people.
Wow.
And 12,000 rough sleepers in the UK. US figures, about 770,000 people homeless in 2024, up 18% from 2023.
Ooh.
So these two films, very different, a drama comedy and a documentary, a modern documentaries fitted together from little bits of footage, and a comedy from one of the great masters of 20th century cinema. But I think they are looking at some of the same ideas from different perspectives. They're both. I made a little list here. They're both talking about the class war, aren't they? The artist collective get thrown out of their homes in a secret mall apartment. Baxter is thrown out of his home by his social betters, I suppose.
Yep.
Baxter and Fran and the Rhode Island artists, they're both victims of the wealthy in this film, isn't it? They're both exploited for what they can provide by richer, more comfortable, more decadent people.
Yep.
And both of them kind of look at sort of like loneliness and isolation, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's definitely class all over both of these films. And as I mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, David and Goliath in both films. I think it's nice to see the underdogs kind of are proven right by the end of both films. The fact that they're turning them all into, or at least considering it, turning it into housing, which is a greater need, or the fact that CC Baxter gets the girl at the end. I mean, I think those with lesser means come on top in both films, which is great. I like what you're talking about. I mean, the housing is very real, very serious issue. And there's this nice little, I think, theme in both films about home and community. I think, Michael definitely feels it in Secret Mall Apartment. You're finding something lovable about the place where you live, even if it's not a great space, even if you have to put a lot more into it than you sort of get out of it. But finding home, I think, is super important. Whatever it is, it can look like a palace, it can look like a modest apartment, it can look like a secret mall apartment, but as long as you get home and the people that populate that home, then you've got something special, I think. And in the apartment, like Fred McMurray, we see his home scene. He's like faking his way through Christmas. He doesn't love his wife. He's, all these executives have their mistresses, and they're lacking that. I think they're ultimately lacking home. And it is ironic that it looks like CC Baxter wants to move out at the very end, but I'm not sure he does. I can't imagine him leaving that place. So it's like finding something to love about your home, I think, is in both of these films.
Yeah.
And also escapes, I guess, escapes that become homes. Like the Secret Mall Apartment is definitely this escape space at first, but I think then they're quite surprised to realize how much they like hanging out there, and they're sleeping there four nights a week on a couch or something like that. And also, like these executives try to be escaping to these this illicit apartment for their trysts with their mistresses. So there is something definitely about having this other space to go to. In order to, live your best life or live a life.
I mean, both these films are about keys, aren't they?
Yes.
Keys are like super important in both of these.
In both films, yeah.
Films. I mean, there's this bit at the end of Secret Mall Apartment where all the artists they interview, they've all still got their key to the apartment.
Yeah.
The apartment has gone. It's disappeared. The door doesn't exist anymore, really. But But they still have the key on their keychain, because it's like a symbol, isn't it, of this thing that did exist, this kind of this unity and this community. And the same way that Baxter is sending his key around the building in this little envelope and exchanging keys, and then his symbol of having really arrived is he gets that executive washroom key, and then that is the key that he gives back. He like towards the end of the film, Sheldrake asks for his apartment key and he refuses to give it. That's his rebellion, isn't it? It's keeping control of his key. Both these films really lean into keys as symbols. But
instead, he gives him back the executive washroom key. We think he's giving the key to the apartment, but he's actually basically quitting his job by giving me the executive washroom key, which is great. Great use of keys. It's true. I have a key like that.
What's your key open?
I do. It's one of the stupidest things. I was 18 years old, and my roommate at college, he was at like a convenience store, 7-Eleven, if you've probably seen those. And there was a U.S. mail truck was parked there and it was running, I believe. And he stole the truck and drove it back to our place. And then we didn't know what to do. And we were sort of like, the campus security was hanging outside of our apartment. And there's this U.S. Postal Service truck there. And we brought a third friend into it. And we thought, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then we, when the campus security finally left, we drove the truck onto campus and left it right in the middle of the quad, the green space among all the pictures, among all the buildings. And then we ran like wildfire, and we divvied up the keys. There are a couple of keys on this keychain. So I have a key and this little symbol, like a ring, to identify the key. And the friend who got us into trouble, sadly, has passed away. But whenever we're together, the other friend and I will show each other our keys from the mail truck. Stupid thing, but it's a really meaningful moment, and it's a really meaningful memento now. So I get the key thing, and I think it's done really well. And I had, again, kind of thing, I had no idea that was going to be in both films, but it was definitely on my list too. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
So you have that key as a memento of an exciting time and as evidence of a serious crime.
Yes. But I think the statute of limitations has long passed. So
phew, okay.
I'm not worried about it.
So I don't have to edit that bit out of the final version of it.
Yeah, I can. Don't worry about it. They're never going to catch me.
I mean, both of these films are kind of like openly anti-capitalist, really.
Yes, yeah, thank you, perfect. That was my next point. Yep.
So you stole a van, I stole your point.
Steal a van.
There's this thing, isn't there, about, I mean, not just taking advantage of this commercial space to build a secret apartment, but like the art as well, like the art that Michael does, it's art with no financial value, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can't be sold. It doesn't exist for more than a few hours. You can't really buy and sell it. The mod apartment, it's property, but it can't be sold. It can't be exploited. It shouldn't even be there. So it's property without sort of value in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And in the apartment, Baxter, he climbs the corporate ladder to get seniority and more money, but it demonstrates that his success is hollow and corrosive, isn't it?
Yes.
That actually, he gets the thing he wants, and it turns out that's not the thing he wanted at all.
Yeah.
He gets the money and he gets the key to the executive washroom, and they just make his life worse and not better.
Mm-hmm.
So, both of these films are kind of anti-capitalist.
Definitely. Yeah. I think they're critical of the economically elite. There's this wonderful, I think, like character or values contrast between what the higher ups at his insurance company think and value, as opposed to what Baxter does. And I wouldn't call him an artist in any way, but he's resourceful. So for me, the extension of that theme is that artists are resourceful. They'll reuse spaces. They don't need tons of money to beautify lives or places. They can make something out of nothing, and they're reusing things in order to make things that are super, yeah, you're right, temporary, but sort of at least permanent in the imagination. And I think that Baxter, to a certain extent, he is that person. And probably the telling scene is when he doesn't have a colander. He doesn't drain his spaghetti with a colander. He uses a tennis racket. And he's just this wonderful, he does these little arty things around the house where he just shows that he's got a different mindset from the corporate executive that he works for. So I think there's this value and character contrast in both films that really underscores that that sort of panning of white-collar businessmen and developers and all that. So I think it's strong. It's strong in that way. Those points are there.
These films, they're very different, but they are absolutely a great double bill.
Yeah, I thought so.
They belong together. They're two sides of the same coin. That's what we always aim for on this podcast, isn't it? Fantastic. Two looks at anti-capitalism. The Apartment is 65 years old this year. So we've been making anti-capitalist art for 65 years. Have we learned anything yet?
That you just can't beat it. You can't beat the beast.
God damn.
It's a big, hungry monster that we can't possibly. We should just feed it. Keep feeding it, and then it will just bloat and explode.
I'm sure that will definitely work. We have just enough time to talk about what else has been playing at this theatre. Shall I go first?
Yes, because you did.
I've actually seen something new for a change. So this weekend we went to go and see The Phoenician Scheme, the new Wes Anderson film. Absolutely incredible cast, as all of his recent films have had. And I can report that Wes Anderson is now officially making Wes Anderson parodies.
Yeah,
it's just like Wes Anderson looked at all of his previous films and said, "Let's do that again, but squared." It's the short answer is really not very good. I thought not particularly funny, excessively mannered. And there's this thing about kind of the way that he makes his films now. The pace is just tremendously sort of monotonous. Everyone speaks with the same tone, at the same pace. All of the scenes are paced at the same speed. For a scene, it's fun, but for a whole film, it stops being fun.
Yeah.
Before we started recording, you kind of said, Wes Anderson needs to have a break. Go back and watch Bottle Rocket and maybe kind of remember, what made those early films good. The new films, just so mannered. They're becoming hard to watch now.
I'm glad you gave him that many chances to before you pronounced that, because I think I would have said that probably 10 years ago at least, maybe 15. Was it Moonrise Kingdom? I think was my last foray with any enthusiasm for his films.
Right.
I do think he needs a break because he's just doing the same thing again and again. I think actually what he should do, I think he's probably a great director, art director. I think he should just shoot someone else's film, just be a cinematographer on something, because he's so good at that. I mean, they have a look that's delicious and it's engaging and it's very distinctive. The storytelling, I mean, he keeps writing with Roman Coppola, and I don't know that helps at all. I think they're just sort of enabling one another. So they're being cute all the time, but never really clever, I guess. So I'm probably not going to see that. I'm sorry. But we invested an episode a couple years back with the Alien film there.
Yeah, well, Asteroid City, yeah.
Asteroid City,
go back and see that. This new one also has Tom Hanks in it, so it has that going for it. But
Tom Hanks, thanks for mentioning that. Thanks, Tom Hanks. I do wonder how he gets all these guys. I mean, what do you think he's paying? Are they doing it they must be doing it at just a number of reduced wages, right? Like
I guess he pays at scale, and it's fun to. Well, it's either that he's just a great director and it's fun to work with him, or I did read this week that apparently all his films are bankrolled by Stephen Rails, US billionaire with a personal worth of $8.9 billion.
Oh, okay.
So it might just be that he's got a wealthy buddy.
Fully explained.
That's how it works.
No need to go on, I guess. That conversation might be over.
Have you seen anything else this week?
I saw Roman Polanski's first feature called The Knife in the Water, Knife in the Water, I guess, which I'd seen on television years ago. It was probably in England because
it's almost certainly a film that's on the BBC on BBC Two late at night.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those situations, I think, and I guess I didn't see the whole film, and I clearly didn't remember it well because I remembered it as being excellent. And truth is, it's a first feature. I mean, it's really well done, especially when you consider so much of it's shot on water with boats and all of that, and in cars. But I didn't like it. I didn't like it so much. So it's okay. Yeah, but definitely. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's probably from that same period as the Apartment, probably very early '60s. Good looking film, well acted, a three-hander basically. And they're either in a car or in a boat for the whole film, or in the water swimming around. But I wasn't that engaged. So It's good to see it. Good to see it on film at Canonic here in Portland. So that was cool, and I love the experience. But I was underwhelmed. But then again, you gotta make what you can when you're early in your career, and then hope to grow from there. And he certainly did. So, but it ain't Chinatown. Let's say that.
Okay.
They could have said that at the end of the film. Hey, this isn't Chinatown. Yeah.
So we're semi-succeeding on our policy to not amplify the work of Roman Polanski. On
Yes.
This on Blue Sky, we are at Two Real Cinema Club. Read the blog at tworealcinemaclub.com. Comment on our YouTube channel or email us at tworealcinemaclub@gmail.com. One thing we haven't been saying is tell your friends about us. Leave us a review. Give us some stars on Apple Podcasts. It helps us out, I think. Maybe. It might do.
Definitely.
Next time, we are heading back into the cinema to watch...
Vampires. Ghouly vampires.
We are watching vampires, although they don't appear until the second half of the film. We are watching Sinners, which some people have, I've read online, a number of people said, film of the year. This is film of the year, Sinners.
Okay.
So we will decide for ourselves whether we think this is film of the year, but we will be comparing it, having just mentioned a Coppola a couple of minutes ago in Wes Anderson's little slot there. We'll be watching Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1997, I think it is.
I've never seen it.
Pre-Matrix Keanu, I think.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves in 1992. And Winona Ryder.
1992? Well, even earlier than that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So back in the midst of time.
Yeah.
33 years ago. So, which I remember seeing at the time and thinking, this is not a good film, but it's an interesting film.
Yeah.
So I wonder how it will compare to Sinners. Join us next time for something which we hope will be interesting and good. And until then, maybe avoid the Phoenician scheme, but you could do a lot worse than find yourself a secret mole apartment.
Yes, CD apartments. Well, they're still rentable.
Thanks as always, and see you next time.
Bye, everyone.